Hey, Kevin, thank you so much for joining us at the podcast, The X Monks Drive. Such a pleasure having you here.
Oh, it's a pleasure to join, to be with you, my newest friend in Sukrana.
Absolutely, Shukrana. Thank you. You know what? I could not wait. For the last few days, I was traveling and I was so waiting forward to this conversation. And I told you last time as well, in the first time when I read your LinkedIn profile, where you mentioned growing and guiding gratitude for organizations and individuals across the globe and generations. I so wanted to get in touch with you because Shukrana and what you call as gratitude has been the driving force of my life. It has
Mm,
been one of those deepest values that I've learned from my mother.
mm,
And I actually wanted to speak to somebody who is living that so that I can understand the anatomy of gratitude. Tell
mm.
me, how did you realize that gratitude is something that you would like to dwell deeper and you would like to share with the world?
Yeah, uh, I'm so excited to be here, to be in conversation with you, the conversations we've had leading up to this. Thank you, and thank you, you who are joining us. Thank you for being here. And I invite you, this is the way I like to think of podcasts, that the three of us, Gaurav, you and me, are sitting down for a conversation. So just pull up a chair with us here and join the conversation. So wow, I never imagined that I didn't know you could do work as gratitude. I didn't know it could be a focus of work. I found gratitude in a very dark time of life, and it was just a little over 4 years ago. Um, but if you had asked me 4.5 years ago, "Are you a grateful person?" I think I would have pretty flippantly said, "Oh, of course I am." Right? Aren't we all? Yeah. I mean, I was taught to be polite. My mom and dad taught me good manners. So I was always taught to say please, thank you, you're welcome. And Gaurav, I equated that with gratitude until about 4.5 years ago, or a little just over 4 years ago now, 4 years and 2 or 3 months. um, April 17th. And you know, in this conversation, I may quote a few dates. There are a few dates that are etched in my mind and in my memory. Other dates, not so much. So don't think I know all of these dates. I happen to remember these dates. April 17th, 2018 was a really dark day in my life. I struggled to get out of bed that morning. And I've had 3 bouts of depression in my adult life, starting back in 2002. You know, our world changed September 11th, 2011, and I had left a very successful career earlier that year to join a high-tech startup, and then that high-tech startup failed, uh, September 11th, 2001, right after that, because our investors backed out. And then we led to this decline, and I was out of work. I had lost a lot of money, and that was the first time I went into depression. So I knew that what Winston Churchill called the black dog, right? Depression. I was familiar with that. So April 17th, 2018, it was there. It was knocking on my door, and I struggled to get out of bed. I had no energy. I had no excitement about life. It was just, but I had a morning rhythm. Some people call it a routine. I prefer to think of it as a rhythm because I don't do things in the same order every day, but they're a set of things I do every day. And I entered into prayer. And as I entered into prayer, there was no desire to pray whatsoever. But I uttered these words: Spirit, you are the source of creativity. Spark creativity in me. And I was in this space I would call liminal space between being fully awake, fully asleep. I may have even nodded off. But 45 minutes later, I remember jumping up erect, and there was an idea that was 85, 90% fully formed to start what, and even the name for it, Start the extraordinary experiment. Now, from the time I was 13, 14 years old, I've wanted to live an extraordinary life, but I have a bit of a problem. I'm a very ordinary guy, right? I mean, I'm not very athletic. I'm too tall to be a jockey, too short to be a basketball player, too slow to be a baseball player. I wasn't athletic. I wasn't overly intelligent. I remember a few years ago, my friend Tiffany, business partner at the time, asked me about Mensa. And I'm like, what's that? And she goes, that's what I thought, So I didn't know what the Smart People Society was called because I wasn't of above average intelligence. But I always wanted I wanted it to matter that I lived. I wanted my life to make a difference. So we set out this 90-day program, 13 weeks. And week 6, we dedicated to gratitude. Each week was called a challenge. So it started with the awareness challenge, just inviting people to be aware of the people around them, where you're at, what's going on around you. By week 6, we got to gratitude. So this is just 4 years ago. And it was the first time in my life that I asked the question, are being thankful and being grateful the same thing? Because up to that moment, I had assumed they were. And in that moment, I realized there was a difference.
So
And
tell me
that
about
was
that.
what planted the seed that I wanted to live a grateful life.
So you said being thankful and being grateful are two different things.
Yeah.
Also, you spoke about that you were taught good manners, saying please, thank you, sorry. So help me understand, what's the connection and how are they two different?
Okay. So you listening, I'm wondering, do you see a difference, right? And might you have been raised, even though we could have been raised in very different cultures, could we have been raised with very similar values, right? To respect the elders, to say thank you. So what I realized is so many times, thank you is an automated response, pre-programmed.
Also, as I'm just listening to you, if somebody's giving me something, I'm saying thank you, it's too transactional in nature.
That is it. To me, that is the difference. Saying thank you can be. Now, there are times, I'm not saying that every time somebody says thank you, it's transactional, but it is very easy for saying thank you to be a transaction and to even be a shallow transaction. I mean, imagine you're going through, you're at a coffee shop or a tea house, and the server presents you a cup of tea. You don't look at the server, you don't make eye contact with the server, and you say, thank you. My question is there any gratitude in that transaction? No, I don't think so. So gratitude, Gaurav, gratitude is transformational. Gratitude is always transformational. Where simply saying thanks can be transactional. For me, that's the single biggest difference. If I am grateful, so a few weeks ago, I was in a journey, going deeper on this gratitude journey. And I sat down for breakfast, and I had a very simple breakfast that morning. I had a cup of coffee. I had a bowl of yogurt and granola with strawberries on top. And for a moment, there was a moment that all of a sudden I thought, how many people and who are the people responsible for making this simple breakfast available to me? And I started thinking, and I started trying to envision, okay, first off, we think of those 4 elements. So coffee, somebody planted the seeds that grew the beans. Somebody picked the beans. Somebody roasted the beans. Somebody packaged the beans. Somebody shipped the beans. Somebody loaded the beans on a ship. Somebody took them off a ship. Somebody was on the ship that piloted the ship from point of origin, Colombia, Ecuador, wherever, to the United States, which is where I live. Then it was offloaded the ship, put onto a truck, taken to a distribution center. How many people were involved? And what if I could imagine their faces, their names? Now, I have friends that are fourth and fifth generation coffee farmers from Honduras. And the coffee they now roast 5 miles from my house, I know when I drink a cup of Marvin's blend, I now know who Marvin is, the farmer that grew it. And I know who picked those beans and the process they went through. And what if we can be grateful for all of those people, right? So that's gratitude at a different level, right? That's not a transactional, yeah, thanks.
Yeah. This reminds me of my encounter with Shukrana. And I remember last time when during our conversation, you said, I don't know if I chose gratitude or gratitude chose me.
Yep.
And when you said that, it stayed with me because for the longest period of time, I've been in the space of coaching, leadership, executive, life coaching. And when people ask me, Gaurav, how did you get into coaching? And my response is exactly the same. I don't know if I chose coaching or coaching chose me, because I believe three things happen to you. One is when you fall in love. You cannot go out on the street and say, today I'm going to fall in love.
And pick the person. Yeah.
Yeah. The second thing is when you get to experience truth in your life. Some people call it spirituality. I'm saying encountering your own truth. You cannot choose a day for yourself. You have been chosen to walk on that path, and everything is destined. The third thing is, for me, it's coaching. And I could relate to that when you said that gratitude chose you. I still remember very vividly. I came back home, my mother was working in the kitchen, and while she was actually making curd, the, the process of making curd is very, very simple, Kevin. They pick up a teaspoon of curd, put it in a vessel or a container. Onto that, you will just pour in warm milk at a specific degree temperature. It's not too warm, not too cold, just at the optimum exact temperature. And that's what makes a lot of difference. And after some time, you will just keep that container outside for some time. And then at an appropriate time, you're going to put it in the refrigerator. Simple process, no rocket science. Now, interestingly, while I was watching my mother going through the entire process, she was saying, Vaheguru, 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 Vaheguru. She was reciting the name of her God, my God. Some people might call it Allah. Some people might call it Jesus. We call it Vaheguru. And very curious, intrigued by this process, I went to my mom. I said, Mata, that's what I used to call my mom. I said, Mata, why are you disturbing Vaheguru for such a simple process? She looked at me, smiled. She said, यार ये मैं नहीं चाहती कि मेरे को ऐसा लगे कि ये मेरी वजह से हो रहा है. Just for your understanding, Kevin, what she meant was, she said that I don't want to be in this illusion that it's happening because of me. I'm only doing what has to be done. But the process is taken care by somebody else. And in that process, she told me कि ये तो मेरा शुक्राना करने का नजरिया है. She said, that's my way of expressing shukrana. That's my way of expressing gratitude. From that day onwards, I realized the importance of shukrana. And I don't remember even a single day after that where I've not expressed my deep gratitude, my deep shukrana to whosoever is taking care of the world. As I said, some people might call it universe. You might call it God, nature, whatever we are convenient with. But there is somebody beyond this superficial body that I'm living in who's working through me, and everything is happening.
Yeah.
And I'm getting all the glory. So, yeah.
Yeah. So a word I use for what you've just described is transcendence, right? There
Mhm.
is, and I believe it's a being, but there's someone or something bigger than us, beyond us. And that's what sparks gratitude, right? We recognize that what we have in life are gifts we've received. We didn't create this for ourselves. We didn't. Hey, you and I both, even though we're thousands of miles away,
Mm.
there's oxygen flowing in and out of our bodies, and there's blood flowing through our veins at this moment.
Mm.
And neither one of
So,
us can take credit for the blood or the oxygen creating, right?
absolutely. Kevin, for the benefit of people who are listening to us right now, what's your take on that? What difference does it make in one's life when one starts to live from that space of gratitude? Once one start to live from that space of gratitude and shukrana.
So, gosh, I'll try to. This is not a flippant answer. I will unpack this, but I remember the time. It was about 14 months ago when we were creating my website, and the Susie, the designer I was working with, and the artist I was working, came back, and she had an image on the homepage, and that image said, "Gratitude changes everything." And I was like, "Ooh." She goes, "Well, I heard you say that. You believe that, right?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, of course I do." She goes, "Well, aren't you willing to put it on your website?" And I'm like, well, yeah, but what if other people don't believe that, right? What if that sounds like a bold, audacious claim? So, Gaurav, what I've started doing in time since then, I know I invite people into conversations, and I just put up this statement: gratitude changes everything. How do you respond to that? Do you go, "Oh, that's nonsense"? Do you go, "Wow, I'm curious. I hope that's true. I believe it's true, or I've experienced it as true"?
Wow.
Okay. So, yeah. So here, I do these January 2021, we started hosting these things we call 30 days in the power of gratitude. The very first one I'm hosting, there are 5 or 6 people from one group in the United Kingdom. And on day 28, one of them tells me, 28 days into this, Gordon, he gives me permission to use his name. Gordon says, "Kevin, I started as a skeptic, cynic. I didn't believe any of this stuff. Gratitude changing everything. Nah. But now I see it." Right? So here's what I say. What does gratitude do? Fundamentally, gratitude shifts what we see, right? So
Mm.
Anais Nin said, "We don't see the world as it is. We see it as we are." What we see in the world, if you wake up and and you choose whatever you want to choose today, you choose that it's going to be a bad day, and you want to be grumpy. You chose that. You chose that.
Mm.
You will have a bad day. I can guarantee it, because
Yeah.
that's how you've chosen to see the world today. Likewise, if you choose, and I don't know if this is still on my LinkedIn profile. I think it is. There was a time I'd written this, and it was a conversation that I had with a woman now 10, 12 years ago. Met her at 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm there for a project, and she gets out of her car, and she was one of those a little less grumpy. I mean, a little less cheerful, a bit grumpy. She looked at me, and I'm just I'm excited to be here. She goes, "Are you always like this?" And I'm like what? She goes, "You're happy." And I'm like, "Yeah. You know why? We get to choose.
Yeah. Yeah.
We get to choose." So gratitude is this, what it shifts what we see. And when you Wayne Dyer, my favorite quotation from Wayne Dyer is this: "When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change."
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
gratitude. Gratitude, it's that filter, it's that perspective. It's how we want to see the world. And when I choose to believe that the world's good, that God is good, that you used the word, so Gaurav and I've had deep conversations leading up to this that's recorded. I learned that his mother passed just a couple of weeks ago. We were talking about that. And you said that a friend of yours, you said, what was it about? God is kind?
Oh,
Oh,
somebody called me up and said, "How are you doing? How are you holding up?" I said, "God's been kind."
God's been kind.
And my friend said, "Can you still say that?" I said, "Why wouldn't I say that?" This
Right.
is very interesting, Kevin. As I'm listening to you, quote that heard several years back is coming so alive in
Mm.
front of me. It says, you can either think that life is happening to you, or you can look at that life is happening for you.
For you. Right.
And
Hey,
as you were mentioning, yeah,
it's your choice, right? The same events are happening. The same events.
how would you put it forward to a person who's going through some really difficult times? It could be losing a job or losing a family member, going through some really difficult times in all directions. How could you live from a space of gratitude if the person is not accustomed to living from
Right.
that space?
So for me, it's inviting the person to find gratitude in the moment, not necessarily for the moment, and in the process of what's going on, not for what's going on. So you lost your job, or you just got a health diagnosis and a health scare. Those are really scary moments. But wow, you have a supportive family, you have loving friends, you have this network of people that are surrounding you to help you get through this. That's something to be grateful for in the moment, right? um you're still alive, right? I mean, this is one of those things. You lost your job, things are really bad. Hey, I've lost jobs. I've had businesses close, right? I've ended up with a boatload of debt, but I still had a wife that loved me, who believed in me, children that loved me, friends that came around me, right? And I still had breath in my body. And I remember years ago, a friend of mine tweeted this to me. She did not know who said it, so we don't know the original source, but the quote was this: as long as you have a pulse, you have a purpose.
For as long as you have a pulse, you have a purpose.
Yeah. So if you're still
Wow.
alive, there's still hope. There's still something for you to do here today. Find it.
Mm,
So here's what I think. I think there are times in life when gratitude is easy, right? I mean, there's so many blessings in life. You go, oh, what are you grateful for? And you can rattle off a dozen things. And then there are times, my friend Chester Elton, at the beginning of the pandemic, he and I teamed up and we were doing this thing, and it was talking about finding your gratitude. Because there are times when life
mm,
is tough, the things you talked about, in those moments, gratitude is still there, but you may have
yeah,
to dig to find
yeah,
that
yeah,
thing for
yeah,
which you can
yeah.
be grateful for now. And when you find that thing for which to be grateful for, and you lean into gratitude when life is tough, you find a little more strength to keep leaning, to keep persevering. You find
Mm,
hope, because here's something I learned. I didn't know this. I wasn't taught this, but hope grows in gratitude.
yeah, yeah, yeah. This friend of mine,
Shukrana, right?
yeah, a friend of mine, his name is Saurav Huda, and he does not believe in God. The other day I was talking to him, and I was saying, "Hey, how do you find so much of strength in your life? And what's your shield?" You don't believe in God. What's your shield? Where do you find so much of strength? And he said, my shield is my gratitude.
Hmm.
And while I was listening to you, Kevin, one of the wisest human beings ever walked on earth, his name is Kabir.
Okay.
And Kabir said, दुख में सिमरन हर कोई करता है, सुख में करे न कोई. What it means is during difficult times, we all pray. We don't pray in good times. सुख में जो सिमरन करे, दुख काहे का होए. If we continue to pray during good times, why would even the difficult times come to us? And I personally believe gratitude is the best prayer.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
During the last conversation, Kevin, you spoke about a 30 days challenge where every day you post a question and ask people to be grateful for 30 days in a row.
30
Very
days in a row.
curious, very curious to know what is written on those cards. What are the different challenges that you offer to people that they will
Okay.
focus on the good things rather than looking at the difficult phase of their life? Would love to
Okay.
hear one
So
after the
I'm
other.
happy to answer this, but I realized I didn't answer one of the first questions you asked me. How did I get into gratitude as work? And
Yeah.
before we hit record, I was sharing, I'm so excited that you and I are together today. But I talked about April 17th, 2018 being a dark day. June 17th, 2019, in my morning prayer time, I heard these 4 words, and it was kind of like a question mark. It was an invitation. The question was, host a gratitude challenge. It wasn't a mandate, right? It wasn't, thou shalt go host a gratitude challenge. It was just like an invitation, host a gratitude challenge. I thought, well, that would be interesting. So I called a friend. I said, hey, you want to host a gratitude challenge with me? And I thought my friend would give me all kinds of pushback. How would we do that? He goes, count me in. So 2 days later, Gaurav, June 19th, and I can show you the tweet because I went back and screenshot the tweet. 7:33 in the morning, I think it was, again in my morning prayer time, there was this impression. There's an artist who will join and create artwork for the gratitude challenge. I'm like, well, that's interesting, but I don't know any artists. I really don't. Didn't know any. I mean, I knew some, but I'm like, so the thought wouldn't leave me alone. So at 7:33, I tweeted, just curious or just wondering, is there an artist willing to contribute artwork for a gratitude challenge? Can be computer generated or hand drawn. Respond or DM if interested. And I just let it go. Just put the request out to the universe, let it go. 8 hours later, a friend of mine, Gary Turner in the UK, retweets this and tags 3 people in the tweet. All 3 responded. The first one said, I only do fine art and oils. This sounds interesting, but it's not my medium. Good luck. Second one says, oh, I do gratitude art. I'd love to do this. I happen to be starting a art show in Berlin on July 8th. I'm like, oh, that's the date we're starting the project. So you're probably too busy. The third person, and you can validate all of this on LinkedIn as of today, July 8th, 2022, that we're recording, because it was 3 years ago today that we launched this project. The third person, her name is Kat Hayes. She's also from the UK. Kat didn't think she was an artist. I just draw sketches. But sure, I'm interested. And so Kat and I, through Twitter and email messages, started creating these challenges. And we created, Kat says, how many images do you want? I'm like, how many are you willing to create? Right? I mean, here's an artist. I said, we're going to do 10 days. She goes, well, what if I do 11 images? An overall campaign image and one for each day. I'm like, oh, Kat, that would be amazing. And so Kat started sending me sketches. And I will show you 4 of the first 10 she created. And so what we created, we sought Because in my life, Gaurav, I had a very anemic gratitude practice for years. I had a mentor years ago that told me to think of 3 things to be thankful for before my feet hit the floor when I was getting out of bed in the morning. I had 3 things. I pretty much said the same 3 things every day. I'm grateful for my wife, or I might go broad. I'm grateful for my family, grateful for our home, grateful for my job. The next day, get up. What are you grateful for? Home, family, job. I mean, I could do it in 3 seconds. And that's when
Yeah.
I started realizing that's not gratitude, right?
Hmm.
That's that automation we're talking about. So we started
Hmm.
looking for what are some unique ways that we could um, create. So what if here was Kat's favorite of the original images, the highlight of your day challenge. And
Hmm.
she created like a film strip with a spotlight shining on one of the frames. And
Hmm.
I wrote the things that are now on the back. These would be the prompts. The highlight of your day. Review the last 24 hours as if you're at the movies. Identify the moment that stands out as the highlight of your day. Pause and express gratitude for it. And be extra grateful if you had several highlights, like, right? You think of the highlight of your day, go, I don't know, there was this, and there was this, and there was this. Wow, that's an amazing day. And that's an amazing movie. When you go to a movie and people go, what was the best part? And you go, all of it, right? So another one, the last hour challenge. The last hour. Look back at the last 60 minutes of your life and
Hmm.
identify specific things you're grateful for. Be
Hmm.
creative and come up with as many things as possible. And I remember writing in the longer version of the prompt, and you just woke up in the morning, you go, gosh, what's there to be grateful for? Oh, you had a bed. You live in a house. You had heat or air conditioning. You're sheltered from the elements.
Hmm.
You have electricity. Seriously? You go, there's nothing to be grateful for. I just woke up. Another one of my favorites, the Lifesaver Challenge. The
Hmm.
Lifesaver Challenge. Remember a time when you were in a jam and didn't know how you were going to get out of it? Who was that person or that group of people that reached out and threw you a lifeline or became a lifeline for you? Express
Wow.
gratitude for them. And if possible, reach out to them, send them an email, send them a text, pick up the phone, call them, say, Gaurav, remember that time? I'm so grateful for you. One more. I mean, and so the lemonade challenge, the lemonade challenge. When life gives you lemons, make lemonade. Pick one of life's lemons, past or present, and express gratitude for the good that came through it or will come through it. So we created 10 of these and we're hosting this challenge. Again, I think it's so fun that we're doing this right now because it was 3 years ago this exact day when we started this, Gaurav. And then
Beautiful.
then I didn't think we'd ever do a second challenge, but I'd had a
Hmm.
friend that got involved and we ran this as a closed cohort. So we worked hard. We recruited 100 people. And then a friend of mine heard about it. He goes, hey, can I put this out to my list? I have a global list of HR leaders. Like, sure, Steve. And then that was on a Saturday. On Sunday, Steve calls me, says, can I put this in my blog post today? I'm like, sure,
Hmm.
Steve. From Saturday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon to Monday at 12 noon, 190 additional people signed up for our challenge, Gaurav.
Wow.
Our very first challenge, we had 290 people join us. And we were
Wow.
running this as a closed cohort. Day 2, we have 100 people on a wait list. It's like, well, what do we do? There was only one
Hmm.
answer. We do it again.
Hmm.
And that's how it started growing. And that's how I ultimately, one thing led to another. And then I started doing gratitude pretty regularly.
Hmm. And this is so meaningful what you're talking about, because the moment you were showing me those cards, my mind was already looking for the things that I'm really grateful for. My mind was already looking for those situations, those moments, those people that I was really thankful for. When you mentioned that, look at the lifesavers, the name that came to me was Balvinder. A friend of mine, every time when I'm stuck, I'll just give him a call and he would help me get out of that. Every situation when I'm stuck at, this friend of mine, Preeti, would help me to get out of that, be it when I was in the hospital and we were looking for people who could donate blood. I would just call her up and she would help us get people to the hospital, or any other situation when I get stuck. There are friends of mine who'll always be there to support me. When you said that, what are those moments during the day that I'm really grateful for? Just before this conversation, I was playing with my little one, right? I
Yeah.
was playing with little Neer, and she would just come close to me. She will throw some um, prank at me, and then she would go away. What a beautiful moment that
What a
was.
beautiful moment.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Hmm.
let me go a little further on this journey. So
Yeah. Yeah.
we when we started this, we're just sending emails and we're just asking people to respond personally. And if they wanted to post on social media, they could. Well, by the end of the week, we realized we were having problems getting emails delivered. And I went to my email service. They were really helpful. And they come back and go, "Oh, your emails are being delivered. They're getting to," we had a lot of corporate people in our challenges because I do a lot of corporate work. "It's getting to the corporate server, but there's some kind of screening software that's not delivering it to the desktop." I'm like, "Oh, email's not the most reliable for this. What can we do differently?" And then it hit me. I was like, "Oh my gosh, I know of a community platform. What if we started a community online and we post our prompts there? And then people aren't having to rely on email. There's an app version of this, right? They get it right on their phone." So we started doing that. We were seeking to solve a technology problem. Guess what we learned? Oh my gosh. When people come together in community, just like you, when you took this prompt and you started talking about the highlight of your day, what if I'm not just thinking about the highlight of my day. I'm now celebrating Gaurav's highlight of his day, and
Mm.
Julie the highlight of her day, and 25, 50 other people. And it's like, "Oh my gosh, I've never read this anywhere. I've not seen any research on this, but my experience over the past 3 years tells me this: when we share gratitude with other people, it grows exponentially," right?
Yeah.
Something happens and it's magical. It's like, wow. And so we started doing those things in community, and we started growing gratitude communities and inviting people to be part of a cohort, part of a group, and go through this together. And now, Portia. Portia is one of these. I've hosted, we call it 30 days in the power of gratitude, because that's what I want the experience to be, to ground people, to grow people deep into gratitude, right? So we call it 30 days. Portia signed up the very first session. I've now hosted 9 of these sessions. Portia showed up the very first one. This was February 2021 when we started this. The first year of COVID, Portia lost 4 family members to COVID, including her mother and other close friends. It had taken a toll on her life. She's an HR director. She had to go to work every day, be on site, and go through all of those headaches and the stresses, and have friends that got sick, all of these things. And she was burnt out. She just lost her joy. She had no zeal for living. She's very much like I was on April 17th, 2018. And we go through 30 days, and we're together in a celebration session. And I use a tool called Mentimeter. It puts up a question and it populates a word cloud. What word or phrase would you use to describe these past 30 days? And all of a sudden on the screen, I see resurrection and rebirth. I'm like, wow, resurrection. Would the person who wrote resurrection, I've never seen anybody write, would you explain this? Would you talk about your experience? And Portia goes, "Oh, that was me." And you all know, I mean, I lost 4 friends and family members. I had no zeal for life. It was all gone. These 30 days in the power of gratitude, guess what? It's back. It's been a resurrection and a rebirth. I found joy. I reconnected to purpose. You know, I'm excited. I'm ready to get up and go face the world. Like, wow, wow. Portia, she's one of the people that has done all 9 sessions of these 30 days with us. And what she says is, I've now grown my family. You're not just friends. These people I do gratitude with, you're part of my family. Right? Mind blowing, heart expanding. Gaurav, I've got dozens of stories like that. Another one, a Latina mom, single mom of 3 children, paralyzed by anxiety and panic attacks. And she said they got so bad, there times she'd have to pull over on the side of the road, and first responders would stop to check on her. Are you okay? She go, I'm just having a panic attack. I just need a few minutes. I've got to reorient. So at the end, she was in our second or third cohort. And we're doing this. What word or phrase would you use to describe this journey? All of a sudden, I see the word tranquility on the screen. I'm like, tranquility. Hey, would somebody talk about tranquility? She goes, it was me. You all know I talked about the battles I have with anxiety and stress. These 30 days, I went through 30 days in the power of gratitude. Not once was I paralyzed by panic or anxiety. And then, Gaurav, I felt this little nudge in the back. Ask, how often does this happen? I'm like, no, I don't want to ask. And then I asked, how often has this happened in your life that you go 30 days without being paralyzed by panic? And you know the answer. Yeah. Never. It's never happened before.
Yeah. You know, Kevin, this is so moving, because when you speak to people, from what space are you living from? As you mentioned, that this lady mentioned that never. The other day I was leading a program and we were talking about Shukrana, and this lady showed up and said, I would like to share something. He said, for the last 600 plus days, I've been living from this. And I've never lived my life without fear. However, every time when I express gratitude, I experience oneness. And that's what I talk about, that Shukrana is one of the fastest way to live from a space of oneness, because living from a space of separation would only breed in more fear within us. And every time when I'm living from a space of fear, I'm always threatened. What else can you expect? The reptilian brain would be so active, and it's going to hijack our ability to think clearly, make effective decisions, show up for others, take care of them, forgive others. It won't be available to us.
No.
So
No, it's not.
thank you, Kevin. Thank you so much for sharing what it means to live from a space of gratitude. Just curious, 2 more questions.
All right.
One is, if you were to give a piece of advice to your 21-year-old self, what would that be?
Everything you've been told about fear up to this point in your life, I'm sorry, not fear, failure. Everything you've been told about failure is wrong. I was told to avoid failure. I was told failure is to be avoided at all costs. The worst thing that can happen is you fail at something, right?
Yeah.
The understanding I had then was failure is the opposite of success. Do you know what I know now? Failure is part of the pathway to success. You can't succeed without first failing. So don't fear failure. Don't resist failure. That's what I tell my 21-year-old self.
Yeah. And the last question. Now, having lived a part of your life, having experiments, the extraordinary experiments in your life, what do you know for sure, with 100% surety and certainty?
The best is yet to come.
Thank you. The best is yet to come.
The best is yet to come. Gratitude, hope grows in gratitude. Hope grows in gratitude. When we lean into gratitude, we are growing hope in our hearts. And hope is this belief that the best is yet to come.
Best is yet to come. Thank you so much, Kevin. Such a pleasure having you.
Oh,
Uh,
my pleasure. My pleasure
loved
being here
loved
with
our
you.
conversation. Lots and lots of shukrana to you.
Thank you. Much sakrana to you as well. And thank you for introducing me to the concept, because I didn't know it before I met you, that it's the same thing as gratitude.
Yes.
And thank you for listening. You who listen, thank you. Thank you for listening to us, and lean into shakrana, to gratitude for your journey, and let it change something in your life today.